Hi, everyone. I just need to wait. Let me just get okay, there we go. All right, so hello, everybody. Lovely to be here on this chilly morning. And we're going to be talking about weather. What you see before you here are the mountains that I look at from my deck. I live on a farm and I watch what's going on in the Outeniqua Mountains. And on the 22nd, on Thursday, we got a light brush of snow, second time of the season. So we've had a very early winter here in the Outeniquas. And yeah, we're going to be looking at that in more detail towards the end of the talk. Now, weather astrology is a very, very big, rich topic. It's been going for 3,500 years. There are records dating back to the 17th century before the current era. And they come from Mesopotamia, from the book of Heaven and Earth called Anu and Enlil. And we're also in pretty good company as weather astrologers. We have Aristotle, Kepler, and more recently, there was a Dr. Pierce of the United Kingdom who did about 30, 40 years of weather. Then in the USA, George McCormack. And the most recent well-known weather astrologer was Carolyn Egan of Rhode Island. And sadly, she passed in 2015. But I managed to find her before she passed. I did her course and was just absolutely fascinated. And I've always enjoyed understanding how the weather works. So I really am fascinated by the weather astrology, and I love doing it. Okay, so there are many signatures, there are different methods, and we only have an hour. So what we'll do in this talk, we're going to keep it neat and sweet. And I will be putting together a little course. So if anyone's interested, drop me a mail. I'll give you more info at the end of the talk. Okay, so the advantage of astrology-based weather forecasting is that it's long range. We can forecast 1 year ahead, 5 years ahead. Okay, maybe not everybody would want a 5 year ahead look forward, but certainly the farmers greatly value 1 year look forward almanacs, because the computer-based astrology, which is so high-tech, actually can't do that. And they can go like 2 to 3 weeks, and they've got to constantly be changing. What else we can do is we can provide warnings for hurricanes, for major weather disasters. And look, it is a fair amount of work. It's not a 5-minute thing, and it's ongoing. Like Aristotle and them, they did 30, 40 years of recording the weather, working out signatures. So yeah, there is work involved. There are certain aspects when we're going to do an example of a wedding where basically you can do that pretty quickly. And so that you can use in your practice, but that's just a little sprinkling of weather astrology, but it does work and is useful. So our rewards are we get to experience we experience the weather, and so we know whether our prediction was good or not. It can enhance our natal because the planets and the signs are so archetypal, makes life interesting, and weather actually mirrors the politics. So here's a little example. On the, early in July, from the 1st to the 7th, there were hectic gusts of wind that came across where I stay out in the farmlands. And this is my neighbor this was a growing shed, a big growing shed, and he grows organic veg. And the shed was full of his little seedlings. And these wind gusts ripped the shed apart and blew the seedlings to the four winds. So what I did, and it happened early in the early hours of the morning. So when that first gust arrived on the 1st of July, I had my phone next to me. So I switched it on and pulled up my astrology app. And there at 2:50 a.m., this is what I saw. We had Saturn on the MC, partile opposition Mars, and both at 12 degrees, and Uranus in the first house heading for the ascendant. And that wind blew for 3 to 4 hours. So what happened was, we've got this ubiquitous Uranus-Saturn square, and we can see it playing out in so many things. And Mars was translating that square. And at that 2 to 3 a.m., these planets hit the important angles. Mars was opposite Saturn on the 1st of July, and then by the 4th of July, it squared Uranus, because Uranus was at 13. So in weather, we use a 1-degree orb, and for Mars, that translates to 2 to 3 days, because Mars moves between 20 and 30 minutes a day. So we can then add on to that 1st and 7th, 3 days either side. And as I was watching, and so night after night, these howling gusts would come through. I mean, we literally had to tie the deck furniture on the deck. That's the strength of the winds. So on the 29th of June, here's the politics. This very controversial judgment was handed down to Zuma. And we all know what ensued after that. That was in orb of the first Mars opposition Saturn. And on the 7th of July, Zuma turned himself into the police at the 11th hour, literally at 11:40 a.m., also within orb of a 3-day orb. So it's fascinating. It really does enrich one's life. Okay, this is just our little talk outline. We're going to do the basics. We're going to look at an iconic event, and then we're going to do the practical. So what do we have to do for weather? Okay, one general principle is, in general, the world's weather systems move west to east, and that is because the Earth rotates from west to east. Now, an important prerequisite for weather is A, you are doing it for a specific place, and B, you need to know the seasons. You need to at least know 2 to 3 years history of what's the general trends for spring, summer, autumn, winter, and know how the geography is, and what the mountains do, if there aren't mountains, how the sea moderates. That's a prerequisite. And you can also forecast for England, say, in an area of England, but you need to know what that weather is before starting, because you read the charts relative to the average weather of the season. Okay. Next is an understanding of the planet signs and aspects in terms of weather, which we're going to look at soon. And then all important is we are going to be using a southern tropical zodiac. And this little graph will explain why. What we're looking at is a declination graph. Here in the middle is the celestial equator. And that basically is the equator of the Earth projected up into the heavens. And then there is 2326 south. Now that is the maximum that the sun comes south, and 2326 north. And at this maximum, the sun turns. And tropical comes from a Greek word tropos, which means turning points. And so this graph and our zodiac is the turning points of the sun. In other words, these are seasonal zodiacs. What I've decided to do is, because we're Southern Hemisphere, I've started this at the 21st of September, which is when our spring starts. And so what we're looking at, this is the sun moving up and down across that celestial equator. So on the 21st of September and on the 21st of March, the sun is on the celestial equator. Those are equal day, equal nights. And then on the 21st of December and June, the sun is max south and max north. And so basically this is our southern longest day, shortest night, and our summer. So what we've got here is spring, summer, autumn, and winter in the south. And notice that in the north, they've got autumn, winter, spring, and summer. And these zodiacal signs for the tropical zodiac have been configured to the north, because the weather astrology that we're using comes from Mesopotamia down into the Mediterranean basin, and so that's all northern. So what we have to do for the south is to configure the signs into our seasons. So our 0 degrees of Aries is actually going to be on the 21st of September. And I'm going to show you how to do that in Solar Fire. So yeah, this is just the full zodiac from Aries all the way through to Pisces. Notice that each season starts with a cardinal sign, so that initiates the season and brings it out. And then a fixed sign follows, and that holds the intensity of the season, the peak of the season. And we have a mutable to transition from spring to summer. So our 4 cardinal signs: Aries starts spring, Cancer starts the summer, Libra starts the autumn, and Capricorn starts the winter. Alrighty, so without further ado, we're going to look at symbolism. So here's a quick shortcut. I'm not going to go through all these tables in great detail. What we have, just to remember, from as in a normal astrology in our natal, fire signs are generally hot and dry, water signs generally cold and wet, and air signs generally windy. The others are a little bit different from what we're used to. So I'm going to quickly just highlight various bits and pieces for each season. So okay, and also just to tell you that what I've done, I've put a category for temperature, for wind, for moisture, and violence for each of these symbols. So Aries is a violent sign. Why? Because it's ruled by Mars, which is a violent weather planet. Our Taurus, it's lovely and moderate, but it brings growing rains. Why? It's an earth sign, but why? Because it's ruled by Venus, and Venus is a rainy planet, but it brings good rains that are friendly to farmers and so on. Gemini, the most windy, but cold and dry. Okay, on we go to summer. Now for Cancer, we are looking at very wet, because the moon is our rainy planet, and so we can get violent downpours under Cancer. Leo, we're looking at electrical storms. Virgo, although it's earth, it's very blustery, and the reason why is Mercury. And on we go. Autumn, we've got Libra, air, so very windy again. Now, our Scorpio brings extremes. So that's a key word for Scorpio, is extremes, and extreme temp, extreme moisture, either very dry or pouring with rain, violent winds, and it can be part of tornado hurricane signatures. Again, ruled by Mars. You can see the ferocity. Sagittarius, we are looking at generally nice weather, good weather, outdoor weather. And onto winter, we've got Capricorn is the coldest, because Capricorn is earth. So earth's naturally cold, so it is the coldest sign. And it brings destruction, destructive floods and snows and hailstorms. It can also do droughts. And it brings unseasonal weather, so weather that the farmers won't be expecting. And so it messes up people's, especially farmers' plans badly. Aquarius, it's also cold, but second to Capricorn. And one of the reasons why I think that could be is because it's an air sign, and so the air kind of moderates it a little bit. It has a violence factor in that it can bring lightning and electrical disturbances. And we end with Pisces, which is cool and moderate and also brings lovely rain. Moving on, we've got our planets. Here are our lights. As expected, our sun is warm and dry, but it adds lightning. As I said, the moon is the rainy planet, cool and breezy. Now, here are our beautiful benefics, and they bring lovely weather. Venus is mild, moderate, and good rains. Jupiter, on the other hand, is pleasant weather, dryish, and so it's a great weather for outdoors with the proviso that it mustn't be in Pisces and Cancer because those are rainy signs, and then it can add rain as well. Here are our traditional malefics. Now, Mars is very hot, very dry, storm winds, and its keyword is turbulent. And it's part of a signature for droughts and fires. Saturn, on the other hand, the greater malefic, is cold, and it is wet and floods, and so its keyword is stormy. Mercury, it's the mutable planet, and it's the second fastest mover after the moon, so it brings the winds. It's a very windy planet, part of many wind signatures. Here are invisible malefics. They're all cold. And so Uranus, being the erratic planet that it is, it brings squalls and gusts, like I showed you at the start of the talk. Can also be part of cloud bursts and so on. Our Neptune, as we learned in natal, where it can be like a sea mist, so we don't see clearly, we can have poor visibility, like dust storms, like mists and fogs and weird objects raining out the sky. Its keyword is freak. Pluto, destructive, and enduring winds that just howl for days and drizzle, but it can sleet up with Saturn. Okay, with aspects, what we've got, we only use applying aspects, much like we do in Horary, because what the separatings have already happened. Conjunctions are important as a conjunction.
Karen, so sorry, you had a slight freeze of sound. So could you start at the conjunction?
Yes, of course.
Your sound just faded. Thanks so much.
Oh, okay, so
all
sorry.
All good. No, all good. It was perfect. In the next minute, it was gone. So just start at conjunction for us again. It's so interesting. Thank you.
No worries. Okay, so the most powerful aspect is conjunction, but in astrology and weather, we particularly use declination a lot. And so the parallel of declination, where two planets would be at, say, 15 degrees south, that counts as much as a conjunction. And we assess that conjunction from the combo of the planets and the signs. Then we have hard aspects, which is our Harmo 4s and our Harmo 8s. And those are considered violent. They disturb the atmosphere, particularly when you have conflicting planets. So when you have your Mars Saturn in square, expect trouble. Our soft aspects, like sextile trine, bring fair weather. However, if we have Mars trine Saturn, it's not necessarily going to be good weather, because the intensity of those malefics can overwhelm the soft aspect. Right, on to our first example. I've chosen a flash flood that happened 40 years ago, and it literally almost wiped out the entire town. Laingsburg is in the Karoo, in the dry Karoo, and what happened? Okay, so 100 people died, and 3 little rivers, which were tiny streams, meet just before Laingsburg. And a huge amount of rain dropped over 2 days. These little streams became rivers. They met and became a raging torrent that was 6 meters wide and at least 2 meters high, and it just roared through this little town. And literally 70% of the houses were washed away. And people's bodies were discovered in Mossel Bay, which is hundreds of kilometers away on the coast. So it was a truly disaster. And okay, what was it in terms of modern weather? It was a black southeaster, and we have a high pressure. Imagine this high pressure here to be like a mountain peak. And we had a cold front. Remember, the weather comes west to east. So this cold front, which is now past, came along, but this high pressure developed in the Atlantic, pushed into the Indian and pushed the airstream around and across, and it crossed the warm Indian Ocean, picking up loads and loads of moisture and headed onto land in a southeasterly direction. Now remember, with Saturn is unseasonal, and it's famous for bringing bad east winds. So here's a visual between George at the coast and Laingsburg in the Karoo hinterland. We've got 3 mountain ranges: Langeberg, Swartberg, and Witterberg. Now, what normally happens is when moist air comes in over George, the mountains push it up, make clouds, and it rains. George is generally beautiful and green. But on this particular day, the pressure from those high mountain peaks pushed these moist winds right over 3 mountain ranges and into the rain shadow, where 40 centimeters of rain fell. Now, 4 centimeters is pretty nice, but this was 40, 10 times as much, and it was our disaster. Okay, so let's check the astrology that's associated. So when doing astrology, we start with the cardinal ingress of the sun. So January, we know it's summer in the southern hemisphere. So we know we have to go to Cancer. And so we draw the ingress for 0 degrees Cancer for Laingsburg. Remember, weather is local. And this is it. And so the method of approaching our ingress chart is we focus on the 4th house. The 4th house is literally the land beneath our feet. It's the farmlands. It's the land of the towns. And it gets 50% of our evaluation. 25% of our evaluation comes from the 1st house, which is also highly important. And 12.5 comes from just planets in the 7th and 10th, in other words, the other angles. And then we have to pay attention to the planet that's related to this chart. And with ingresses of the sun, it is the sun. Okay, let's evaluate here. So what we notice on our 4th house cusp, we have the sign of Aries. It's a violent sign. It's hot and dry. And on the 1st house cusp, we've got Sagittarius, which again is hot and dry. So when you have that for a season, so remember, this is the birth of summer at Laingsburg. And when both important axes have angles, have hot and dry, then you know that on average, the summer, the 3 months of summer, is going to be hotter and drier than normal. Now, it's normally hot and dry, but this is going to be extra hot and dry. So you can say that with fair level of confidence. Okay, now we take a deeper look at our 4th house. In here, we find we have the planet Jupiter. Okay, Jupiter is our benefic, so we're not terribly worried. But notice that Jupiter at 8 is applying to a conjunction with Saturn. Now we know that the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, it's a 20-year start of a new cycle. So it's a big conjunction happening here. And Saturn is in fall because it's opposite the sign of its exaltation. So when planets are in fall, they behave badly. So we've got stormy Saturn in a nasty mood. Again, it's another warning sign. And finally, we have Pluto, also destructive Pluto in the 4th house. So we're alerted. And we'll look at timing in a minute. But just get the feel for that sometime in this season, there could be some seriously nasty goings on. Notice also that the Lord of the fourth house, Mars, it's first of all in rainy Cancer, and it is an applying square at 22 degrees Cancer. It's in an applying square to Pluto at 23 Aries. So more connections between a malefic and back into planets in the fourth. So we're warned. Then we cast our eye into the first and see the moon. It's the rainy moon. Okay, it's in Sagittarius, which is dry, but it's soon going to be changing and going into Capricorn, which is destructive. And yeah, so again, expect some rain. Right, planets in the other angles. We have freaky Neptune, so we can expect a bit of freak weather. And then we have Mercury in Gemini. We don't normally pay much attention to the signs of this list bit of the assessment, but it's in windy Gemini. So there is going to be a bit of wind going on. The sun actually is in the angle, so that adds heat. And yeah, one can go into great detail, but for now, that gives us just a feel for what's happening. Timing wise, we've got to actually go and draw event reports. And what I've done, I've just extracted the bits that form the signature of the storm. On the 24th of Jan, transiting Jupiter, remember it's in the fourth house, it's stationed retrograde. And then on the 26th of Jan, transiting Pluto, also in our fourth house, stationed retrograde. So you can see that this station is very important. It bracketed this gigantic storm. And so what weather astrology has taught me, that we need to pay attention to the stations of planets because it can bring problems. Right, moving on. On the 25th, the moon, now for a season, the moon is going to move 3 times around that solar ingress chart. But it so happened that on the 25th of Jan, it conjunct the IC. And then it went on, still on the 25th, to conjunct both Jupiter and stormy Saturn. And by the 27th, it was conjuncting destructive Pluto when Langsberg lay in ruins. Right, so the next bit of weather astrology, first having assessed your season, now we go and take a finer look, and we use the quarters of the moon. So since I knew when the flood was, I looked for the nearest moon quarter, which was the full moon on the 20th of Jan 1981 for Langsberg. Again, I'm doing the southern tropical zodiac. So our full moon was in Aquarius, and it happened to be an eclipse. Right, our same rules, 50%, 25%, 12.5%, and 12.5% for the moon apply. What we notice is we've got nothing in the first house, but we have Mars in Leo, which in weather astrology is called, considered quite a potent Mars, and it's turbulent, so extra turbulence, and it is partile trining the fourth house cusp. So here, that Mars is definitely going to overwhelm the trine. And the Lord of both of these important angles, fourth and first, no, take that back. The Lord of the fourth is Jupiter, and the Lord of the first is blustery. Okay, first of all, we've got blustery Virgo over here, ruled by Mercury. Note that Mercury is applying to good old turbulent Mars in a bad mood. So again, we expect a bit of trouble. The weather for this little 7-day period. Okay, so just to say that for the moon quarters, they only hold until the next quarter comes along. So we're looking from here, from 20 to 27 from this particular little chart. So for these 7 days, it's mixed because we've got warm and dry, and here we've got cold and blustery. So it's a mixed mixed story. And what else we've got, okay, is we have the moon, and because it's a lunar chart, and the moon is in Aquarius, so nothing too much to worry about, although, you know, full moons and new moons are known for bringing rain. But the lord of this eclipse is stormy Saturn. And as I mentioned before, it brings weather from the east. And these Jupiter having moved slightly past Saturn at this stage, there are no planets in the 7th, but in the 10th, we find freaky Neptune. And again, it's a rain. We look at the moon quarters primarily for rain. You can also look at the other factors as well, but primarily you chart rain from these. And so we're looking at freak rain. And Venus is also in the 10th in Cancer. So it's a rainy planet in a rainy sign. So more rain. Yeah, and then the activity for that from an event report, our moon in Pisces opposed the lunar phase, the full moon ascendant, exactly on the 24th of Jan, and transiting Venus in Cancer, so a rain planet in a rain sign, applied sextile to the lunar phase ascendant exact on the 25th of Jan. So more rain. Right, onto our declination. We have, this is for Laurie, and this is for the season. So notice that, okay, this line here is our 25th. And this is our celestial equator. Here is our 23, 26, 5 south, 23, 26 minutes south. And so here is our moon line. Okay, the moon moves back and forth across the celestial equator every month. So here was our full moon that we were looking at on our previous chart. And on the 24th of Jan, the moon moved southwards and it paralleled Pluto on the 24th of Jan. Also on the 24th of Jan, Mars, which was sitting very close to the maximum sun turning point, moved up and it paralleled Uranus. So there are two stormy planets. On the 25th, the moon reached zero declination. Now in weather astrology, these maximums and crossing the equator are considered very important rain weather factors. So, and moon is our rainy planet, remember? So that happened. And then also on the 25th, the moon moved along and it paralleled Saturn. The other thing to notice that on the 25th, all of the planets, except for Pluto, which was still sitting along here, all of the other planets were actually in the southern hemisphere. And so that is another warning sign when the planets start bunching up on the declination graphs. All right, so that's Laurie. And now we're going to look at our wedding, which is our practical example. I am giving you some key pointers. It's not all that one can do to assess the weather on a particular day, but I only have 20 minutes to do this, so I can't sit here and give you all the fine tuning. But what I give, you can actually use immediately. So first of all, what are we looking for? We're going to look for Jupiter because we know Jupiter brings us lovely outdoor weather, but we don't want Jupiter in Cancer, Pisces. Aquarius apparently can also bring a bit of rain. We're going to look for sextiles and trines. Say a Mercury sextile Venus will be lovely weather, a Sun trine Jupiter likewise. We've got much more red flags though. So we want to avoid full and new moons and especially eclipses. We also want to avoid perigee moon. Now, perigee, G means the earth and peri means close. So you can inquire on the internet and get these perigee moon dates. And that's when the moon will be closest Earth. So this year, and it's not the absolute closest, but it's relatively close. So 21 July was one, and 17 August is the other. So we don't want to put our wedding on either of those days. We don't want supermoons. Now, a supermoon is a perigee on steroids. It's really maximum, and it's biggest in the sky. And they can bring severe storms and earthquakes, especially when they're configured in an eclipse formation. And thankfully for us, these have already happened. 26 April and 26 May. Again, you can look those up on the internet. Right. Now, we don't want moon at max declination, either north or south, but especially the south if we're in the southern hemisphere, and we don't want the moon in the equator. We don't want a declination traffic jam because we're going to have turbulence and it's going to be trouble. We don't want our wedding in a howling storm. We're going to avoid out of bounds planets because, like planets that are detrimented and fallen, they behave badly. We don't want stationary planets because they seem to be configured in with storms. And we don't want Sun conjunct Saturn. This is a classic cold signature. And we actually don't want Saturn and the malefics in our angles, if at all possible, on our wedding day. Our transiting Mars, we don't want our transiting Mars to be translating any major aspects, like I spoke of in the beginning of the talk. It's trouble. We don't want the bride's veil to be howled away into the distance. And we've got to watch Mercury as well, because that's wind. And we don't want hard aspects to the IC, the AC, and malefics. Right, so for our little wedding, I've chosen Karatra, which is a little village down the road from me, and I've chosen 17th of July so that I can actually tell you what happened on the day. And we first have to look at our cardinal ingress for the season. You can, if your wedding is in some deliciously remote location, then pick the town that's nearest as a workaround. And again, you're going to use our Southern Tropical Zodiac. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hop out of here and I'm going to hop into my astrology program so that I can show you how to do. Okay, I hope you can all see my astrology program. I use Solar Fire, and I'm just going to show you. Is that good?
Lauren? Yeah, great. Thank you. Good.
Brilliant. What I'm going to show you is just how to create charts that we don't often work with. So for an ingress, okay, I have to show you something else before we head straight there. To get our Southern Tropical Zodiac, we have to go Preferences. We have to go Edit Settings. We've got to find our Zodiac tab. We've got to select Sidereal. We have to select the SVP. Now, SVP stands for Solar Vernal Point. Now, for the Northern Hemisphere, the Solar Vernal Point is what they have it at, which is 0 Aries. Now, we want our Solar Vernal Point to be 0, 1. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do this. Double click in there so you keep the degree sign. It's 1 Libra, 41 minutes and 20 seconds. The reason for this tiny adjustment is that this vernal point is set for the 19th of Jan 1900 and we are in 2021. So that then allows us to create charts that are based on, that look like our Southern Tropical Zodiac. Okay, so we are looking for okay, I've got the wedding here, 17th of July at 3 p.m. And I've drawn that for the Southern Tropical Zodiac. So we go down, we go chart, we go return and ingress. We go to Karatra, we make sure we're in Karatra. We'll say we want the current and we want advanced and ingress. And then we go for an ingress of the sun and it must be at 0 Capricorn because we're in winter. So we need that cardinal. Okay, and voila, there we have it. 0 degrees Cancer on the 21st of June. at 5:36 Karatra. Our SVP is North Libra 41. That tells us we've got the Southern Tropical Zodiac, and I use Placidus houses. Many of the weather astrologers seem to use it, so I'm sticking with that for now. Okay, so again, we read and see here we have Pisces on the fourth cusp, and we have Sagittarius on the first cusp, so it's mixed, cool and wet, and hot and dry. And remember, that's for the entire season. So far, how that's played out at Karatra, where I live, it's generally been warm, lovely days, but very cool and often rainy in the evening. But that, it's a general rule of thumb, because that's what our overall impression gives us. We don't have planets in the fourth. We have Mercury in the first. So it's an alert to expect wind. Both the fourth and the first are ruled by Jupiter, so we're not terribly worried about that. And we don't have planets in the seventh, but we do have freaky Neptune up here. So there could be the odd freaky weather event. Okay, so the next thing I would like to show you guys is how to draw the little lunar phase chart. And so we just go chart and we go down to lunar phase, and we can pick 18. We want transiting lunar phases, and then we simply pick the closest. So our closest one is going to be, July. There we go. First quarter on the 17th of July. There we have it. And again, we do the same assessment. It's giving me whole signs. Okay, solar fire does these odd things. So you can just simply go, if you get a problem like that, just edit the whole signs out and put it back to Placidus. Okay, solar fire has a little mind of its own. Okay, so again, here on our fourth house. So remember, this is from the 17th of July until the 24th. And it's a first quarter, so it's first quarter to full moon. And I haven't done all the wedding stuff for, like an election. I just made sure we were in a waxing moon, because this is just simply an illustration. So what we've got on our fourth cusp is Cancer. And so we're alerted to a bit of cool, rainy weather. We've got destructive Pluto sitting in the fourth house. Thankfully, our Saturn's in the fifth. First house cusp, we've got Taurus, which is cool, but it can also bring rain, and that's ruled by rainy Venus. Our fourth cusp is ruled by the moon, which is in Aries, so not too bad. Planets in the angles, we've got erratic and record-breaking Uranus in our seventh, and the hot sun in the 10th. Okay, so that is basically what and the last thing I want to show you while we're here is how to do a declination graph. So you just highlight your moon quarter, you go to dynamic, you go to the graphic ephemeris. No. Dynamic, yes, graphic ephemeris. And we want, I do an 8-day story from the start of the moon quarter, and you're going to pick transits and 30 degrees, and whoop, and voila, you've got your declination graph. So there ends the little tutorial in Solar Fire. I'm going to change the share back to our slideshow, and on we go. So yeah, that's just a little, that was to help you select the thing, and the dynamic events we're going to do in here. So here's our little dynamic events report around the 17th based on our cardinal ingress chart. And we notice that on the 17th, we've got the moon sesquiquadrate, the ascendant, and the moon semi-square, the IC. Now, the moon is going to, in this 3 months, it's going to do loads of aspects. And these, they're not, the priority is conjunction parallel, and then contraparallel, opposite square, and these are lesser. So we're not terribly worried at this point. And the moon is, as I said, it's going to do most of the activity. So what we're trying to avoid is like Mars coming along and doing something nasty. Okay, this is our next little event report where we're going to look at the lunar phase chart, where I've not only noticed added in the angular activity, but I have also added in the actual perfecting of aspects. Right. So what we've got here is on the 17th, the moon went parallel to Neptune. But that happened really early in the morning. So what we do with this on the day, we can actually look at the time when these things happen. Because if we are using a 1 degree orb, the moon, which moves 12.5 degrees a day, it will take 2 hours to do a degree. So literally, these little patterns that the moon brings up last 4 hours, like 2 hours before and after the perfection of that aspect. So that's 1 in the morning, not too worried about that. Moon squaring the IC at 2 in the morning, moon sextile Mars at 7 in the morning, moon sextile Venus also at 11 on the day, moon squaring the sun at noon, moon squaring Pluto at 1, moon trining Jupiter at 10 o'clock that night. And here's our quarter moon. So what I do, I go just a little bit back of the actual quarter because I like to look for that whole day. So there's nothing terribly dramatic. It's all just moon movements. And what happened on this actual day was that it was very cool in the evening. So there we have the moon parallel Neptune. And I think it was a bit rainy during the night. And then from sunrise, the weather started to warm up, and it actually was a lovely day. So what happened was the sextile with Mars brought warmth, the sextile with Venus brought pleasant weather, the square with the sun at noon brought more warmth, and the Pluto actually didn't have a huge lot to say in on this particular day. And so the weather actually continued lovely until about 4 or 5 o'clock. And so that was an absolutely fine day for a wedding. And so that's how we do our check. And then the last thing is our declination, which I've marked up for you here. So here is our 0 degrees. Here is our 17th. And our moon was parallel Neptune, as I mentioned. And then nothing much happened. On the 18th, the moon paralleled Jupiter. And we had another absolutely gorgeous day. It was actually warmer on the 18th than the 17th. So beautiful weather. The moon carries on down, and on the 19th, it conjuncts Saturn. Now, we all know the dramas of the 19th onwards. 19th to say about the 23rd. We had weather warnings across the country. We had a double cold front, and the second cold front was particularly nasty. It had originated down near Tierra del Fuego at the bottom of South America. So it was freezing Antarctic weather that was in a gigantic swirl that swirled across the Atlantic towards us. And the first front was not so bad, but basically on the 19th in the afternoon, that first cold front arrived and brought dark clouds, rain, cold, and so on during the day. And it continued on. And then on the 20th of July, the moon paralleled Pluto. And that was the beginnings of that second front. And we were extremely lucky because this very, very well, he explains the weather so well, Dr. Warren, I follow him. And what he said is a huge high pressure actually developed over South Africa and pushed that hell of a nasty cold front 100 kilometers into the ocean. And so we missed most of it. And even what we had was pretty jolly nasty, but had it actually come full force across the country, we would have had -10-degree weather instead of like -1 or so on that we mostly had in the Cape, you know, -1, -2. So yeah, that was the start of that next cold front. And notice what the moon did. After being in parallel with Pluto, it went out of bounds. And what happened here in the Otaniqua Mountains near Karatra, we had our second snow of the season. And man, it was cold and miserable and dark skies and rainy. And that continued all the way along until yesterday, which was that full moon. And yeah, the 24th was a pretty nice day again, and same with today. So just to bring back the picture at the beginning, there is that second snow that fell. Look, it's only a sprinkling of snow, but we're only 17 k's away from the coast, so we don't have gigantic snowfall here. But man, it was cold. So yeah, there ends my talk. What I'd like to say is, if anybody would like these basic weather symbolism for signs, planets, and aspects, please drop me an email at karenjames77@gmail.com. And I am going to be putting together a little weather course. So again, if you're interested in being on my mailing list, drop me an email, and then when I'm ready, I can let you know, and you can decide if you want to join in or not. I also offer mentoring via Zoom. I can help you with weather prediction. I can help you set up your solar fire to do the weather prediction reports and things, because that makes life a lot easier. There, you're welcome to email or message me, but please a written message. I'm on WhatsApp, Signal, or Telegram, just with your name and what you'd like done, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. I tend to ignore or delay opening voice messages. So a written message is definitely the way to go. And my number there is 079 302 3242. And I would very much like to thank Nancy and Cape Astrology Association for giving me this opportunity to share what I love. And thank you all for being here and sharing in the weather intro. And also thanks to friends of mine who helped critique my talk. This is the first Zoom talk that I've done, so I had to get used to the whole format, and I was given very lovely ideas on how to make the talk relevant and interesting. And yeah, so thanks everybody. And with that, I will stop my share. Can I stop sharing,
Yeah.
Nancy?
Yes, or could maybe put your details, keep your details up for us, Karen.
Oh,
yeah, that would be lovely.
Okay, well, let me
details up and then share if you can.
Okay,
and
well,
then people can take that down.
Will do. Okay, let me put that back. Let me find Zoom and share screen. Okay.
Perfect. There we go.
Okay, done.
Lovely, lovely. Karen, well, for a first time, you're a natural. So thank you so much. You had me glued to your talk and the screen. Really, never lost me for a beat. So that's wonderful.
Thanks
so much. Thanks so much. Perfect. And for one, I will be messaging you. I'd love to join that course. Really
awesome.
Fascinating. And just thinking how, again, we said before we started, the inner world and the outer world and everything reflecting everything else. So we're looking at the weather here, but as we speak about the weather, we can also see other beautiful, easy times or more turbulent times. So thank you for adding that whole Zoomer episode into the talk as well, because it was really a symbolism of the whole period we've been through, wasn't it? Weather and political.
Yep. The power of Mars, Saturn, and Uranus.
Mm. And before we're going to open up the floor, so everybody please feel free and welcome to unmute yourselves or to type the question to Karen. But as you were speaking, I'm going to look down here because I've got my dates there. But of course, we know that in December, to be exact, the 24th, I think here, at 11 degrees Aquarius, we're going to have Saturn and Uranus squaring in the sky again. So I was thinking, what will that period bring weather-wise? Because certainly this last square, which was 15th of June, but it was as if it was a portal, that 15th of June was a portal of some things that unfolded post that period, right up to where we are now. So I'm assuming, so I'm assuming that that end of December into January could easily bring all kinds of weather, natural disasters or something like that. What would you think?
Indeed. There are hundreds of signatures because these very esteemed weather astrologers have developed loads of signatures. Now, the signature for Saturn and Uranus, which has been this whole year, because the first one was Jan, then June, and then December, as you're saying, Nancy. The signature for Saturn and Uranus in hard aspect is disturbed weather. So, and the orb on that, because these are slow movers. So we're looking at least a month either side of those exacts. So pretty much for this whole year. And if you look, my husband actually follows weather, particularly he's looking for the cold extremes. He is a contrarian and he's an independent thinker and a scientist. So he tracks the cold weather around the earth because everybody's going on about the hot weather. And all over the planet for this whole year, there have been records broken left, right, and center, from Australia to America to Greenland to what have you. And I know likewise, we've had that huge flooding in Germany and so on. So on a global level, all the weather patterns are amplified and somewhat disturbed. And then in weather, again, this is beyond the scope of this talk, but you can actually track where the storm begins because you draw an ingress chart or you can draw up that exact Saturn Uranus, and then you track that to where it's angular. And that's where the birth of a disturbance is going to come from. So there's so much. It's a big, broad, rich tapestry of astrology that weather offers us. So it makes life very interesting, and simultaneously the politics, because you can draw your solar mapping and where those things, where Saturn Uranus go angular, watch out for political events. I actually watched on the 15th of June, and Palestine and Israel was triggered, and that was when that war broke out, and the Iron Dome and the missiles backwards and forth. Both of those planets, both of those countries were triggered, both by their natal chart. So you can also bring in countries' natal charts because the degrees. So it gets very fascinating. As I said, in one of my bullets, it does make life very interesting and engaging because we're seeing our astrology live. So there we go.
Yeah, wonderful. Really, truly. I saw a few comments coming through, so you can have a look through those as well. Maybe there are some questions, but truly fascinating, a really lovely talk. And I would assume I saw one of the messages in forecasts on South Africa. I was thinking this morning that maybe soon enough we could have a talk on the forecast for South Africa. I know Theo has done a podcast, but certainly we could maybe have a group of us chatting about the astrology for South Africa. But on that, just to mention this square that Karen is speaking about, weather, politics, South Africa has, the new South Africa chart has got in Western astrology an Aquarius ascendant. and it has fixed sun and moon. So of course, this square interacts with our chart.
Yep.
Exactly. So
Yep.
again, watch out for further stuff unfolding, I would think, then around December, January. It would not surprise me by any means. And remember that South Africa is heading towards its Saturn return. So it seems that this Saturn-Uranus is kind of setting the stage almost for that Saturn return. So again, you know, it's not far removed. It's all linked, of course, to your talk here, Karen. You know, turbulent weather, turbulent politics. So I'll keep quiet now. I'm going to hand the floor over for further questions, and maybe Karen have a look at some of the comments. There are many thanks, and see if there are any questions. Let's put it up here.
I don't see too many questions, apart from the political unrest. So, yeah, what I did is I actually just drew, I took the South African chart and I just did an event report. And there's quite a lot going on. I won't venture to, I haven't examined it deeply, but I can tell you, like what Nancy was saying, there are a lot of big Saturn aspects and other stuff going on. So yeah, I think the turbulence continues, but you know, we must stay positive, and there's also good weather interspersed with a storm. So remember that from the weather astrology, nothing stays the same. Those atmospheric tides move, the storms move along, and so we'll have time to breathe, and yeah, so it's not all doom and gloom ever. On Earth.
Exactly. And these turbulent times need to come out, because if we think of the signatures of Saturn and Uranus, Saturn is the past, Saturn is the old, Uranus is the new and the future. So it's the past and the future having a clash with each other. And it has to, you know, the two are also, they're wonderfully innovative planets. So they clashing with each other because really things are needing to change. We've reached a bit of a stalemate, and nothing changes without a little bit of a push for change. Otherwise, why would we, right? So absolutely, you're so right. And we have to go through the storm to appreciate the sunny weather, isn't it? So nothing is ever doom and gloom. After the cold, don't we just love the sun coming out, as you just described, right?
Absolutely. And then I'd just like to say one more thing, that Nathan Theonaika, to thank him for pioneering that Southern Tropical Zodiac, because Nathan's actually using that with Horaries, he's using that with natal charts, and he's got a group on Facebook where you can find interesting discussion. So he helped me to be able to do that easily. When I saw McCormack and various authors recommending it, and I knew the mechanics of it, and yeah, so big thanks to Nathan and his ongoing research on the Southern Tropical Zodiac, which is our very own Southern Hemisphere zodiac.
Oh, that's great. Thank you to Nathan then. And I do see here, Laurel says, thank you, because I'm a sailor. So of course, weather is very important to the sailor. And then Laurie is asking you, Karen, please remind us who it is that you follow, read the weather, as you mentioned his name.
Okay. The weatherman, it's Dr. Horary, and he's on Facebook. It's SWAIX, I think it's a group. It's Extreme Weather Events. If he also has a blog, weatherblog.coza, and he also has a website. But if you just Google Dr. Horary, you will find it. And so he puts all the satellite imagery and he's great. He's absolutely great. He explained so nicely, and he basically did a whole story on the Langsberg flood. So I was able to go and actually understand in very, very well explained modern geography how that unfolded, modern meteorology. And yeah, it's actually it was called that wind that took the moist air over 3 mountain ranges is called an orographic wind. And yeah, I mean, I'm also like Charmaine, also very fascinated by the geography and so on, you know, the land and how the tides of the atmosphere, the ancient weather astrologers said there are tides in the atmosphere and tides in the earth. And it's actually been proven by these hectic scientists, I think it's Kepler and some others. They've actually they measured the earth tides, because, you know, our mantle sits on a liquid core. And so even though they're unnoticeable, you know, the land is only moving up and down in like tiny increments. These planets actually, especially the moon, affect all of these tides. So yeah, that's another whole branch. There's one man who only uses the moon to predict weather and does it with amazing accuracy. So I'm busy exploring his work as well. Yeah, so the person that I mentioned that I follow, okay, so that's the weather man. And then yeah, in terms of astrology, it's McCormack and a lady called Carolyn Egan. Right. Dr. Horan, yes, that's how you spell it, Dr. Horan, I think it's A.J. Horan, a lovely man. And I got hold of his Facebook group, and I asked his permission to use his images and to use the maps and so on. And he said with the greatest of pleasure. So what a very, very nice person. So yeah, and you know, on his Facebook, he says, you know, you can use anything he puts up there, but always, you know, with permission. So yeah, very nice person and very good meteorologist.
Wonderful. Any more questions for Karen? Any thoughts?
Thanks,
Anyway, thanks for all your lovely comments.
I hope that hope to see more of your work online and on YouTube and things like that. And just those names of those astrologers, could you just type them up so I can get the spelling right? The two that you mentioned.
Ah, okay. Where shall I type it? Shall I type it in the message?
On the chat, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, it's Carolyn Egan. Oopsie. Carolyn Egan and George McCormack. McCormack died, I think, in about the 1970s. He was in America, but he'd spent 40 years, and he actually started one of the early astrology groups in America, and he became its president. So he was a really, I think, can you see my video? This is the book that I use.
Yes. Oh, wonderful. Okay.
George McCormack, and he's got loads of signatures. And in fact, I mean, the weather, you know, from weather astrology can also predict famines and epidemics and many things beside just the weather, because, you know, he noted that as he was going along in his 40 years of observations and defining signatures and things.
Have you, I'm just wondering, maybe a last question, have you also, maybe you have already looked at charts, you know, of like these extreme weather events? Maybe you've done it earlier in the session today, but like, you know, these hurricanes, Indonesia, earthquakes, the event charts.
Yes.
Oh, great, fantastic. And what's the ETA on the weather course?
Shall we say a month or two? I have to just
great.
discipline myself. I've got the info. I must just marshal it into some notes. What I did, I actually had prepared three 3 iconic storms for our talk, but when I timed myself, I realized it was not going to be possible. So earlier in this talk, Nathan Leary, I did the Langsberg flood, and then I actually have prepared the 2017 storm, the June the 7th, where the Cape got hit with massive waves and things, and that wind howled, around 90 kilometers an hour. And then that was, I think, on the 6th. And then on the 7th, it was the Garden Route fires, which burned from my area all the way down to the Van Stadens River gorge outside Port Elizabeth. It was massively destructive. So I looked at that. Mainly I focused on Southern Hemisphere events because I wanted to understand them better. But yeah, one can, like you say, one can look at all these iconic storms. I find that the best way to learn, because you know what happened, and then you can feel that astrology power through.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Any other questions before we close up for today? Any comments?
Thank you, Karen.
Pleasure.
You were really, really great. I studied Carolyn Egan's weather course. It must be 10 years ago or more.
Right.
And she put it on a CD as well.
Yes. Yes.
You got that?
Yes. Yes.
Did I hear at the beginning, I couldn't get online easily at the beginning. Did you say that she has died?
Yes, she died in 2015.
Oh, I didn't even know that. A lovely lady.
She was fabulous and so professional.
And very committed to her work with the weather.
She adored weather. She had started as an astrologer and natal work, but she found that she was much more comfortable with weather, and so devoted her whole career to that.
But thank you. Your talk was excellent. It was really, really interesting and clear. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, lovely, Monica. Lovely to see you here as well.
Yeah, hi, Nancy.
Hi there. And remember, everyone, and Monica, if you missed a little bit of the beginning, within a week, Lee, who helps us with the tech stuff, and myself will be sending the link, and it will be available for 3 weeks.
That's
because
fantastic.
I think all of us will need to re-listen and digest because it's so rich, right? The information is so rich. So then we can all re-listen in our own time.
Sure.
So you'll get the link. All right, look out for it.
So I'm going to say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Be well.
Bye-bye, bye-bye. Stay safe.
Indeed.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
There we go. Perfect. Good to see you, Monica. And remember, we'll be sending the link through. So, Karen, thank you so much. Truly appreciate it. Lovely talk, and I'm sure most of us here today will be very happy to be on your course. So we'll message. Okay. We'll
My
be in
pleasure.
touch.
Thanks,
Thanks
Nancy.
so much, and enjoy your Sunday. Right.
Yes.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Good. Have a lovely day, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.